Hey guys, subscribe for daily content, and if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on, YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I have a very special knife review to share with you guys. This is the Masters Collection Fantasy Folding Knife. Yes, believe it or not, that is actually what it's called. I don't even know how to lay this thing down. I have no idea what the YouTube algorithm is going to do with this video or who it's going to show it to, but if you found my channel because you found this knife on Amazon and thought, I wonder if anybody on YouTube has a video of this knife. Well, you found me. And if you're new to my channel, I'll let you know I review pocket knives a lot, like over 4,000 uploads, a lot. And primarily, I like to stick to quality stuff. So I'm going to give you a bit of a spoiler here. This is a huge piece of garbage, a terrible abomination of, I'm going to go over everything about it. But I would invite you to check out my playlist called Cheap Knives I Like that showcases nothing but anywhere from relatively inexpensive to inexpensive folding knives that are far superior. This knife currently, as of the time of recording, has 622 reviews with an average rating of 4.7 stars. Okay, so I'm going to let you know right now, anybody who rated this knife higher than 0 stars is a liar, 100%. But we're going to go over the details of this knife, what it is and what it isn't. Thanks so much to my patrons for supporting me. Let's start off here with the Masters Collection. What is that? It's literally just the name of the brand. It has nothing to do with anything. It is not a label of quality. This is a knife that is manufactured in China. Truthfully, it was probably manufactured a long time ago. It may have changed warehouses over literally decades. It also may have received a paint job or two at some point. Now, it is made out of stainless steel, but if you are not familiar with steel, stainless steel just means it's stainless. And that doesn't mean rust-proof. It just means it's got enough chromium in it to generally resist enough corrosion or to resist corrosion in a way that they can label it as a stainless composition. That is where the quality of the blade steel ends. It's made out of something called 3CR13 MOV, which I love that whoever Masters Collection is, they tout that as quality stuff. It's all over their page. I mean, I'm not making any of this up. All over their page on Amazon, it's like, we use premium materials like 3CR13 MOV. It's one of the lowest grade. It's barely a composition that can be used as a blade, right? And I can hear it already, especially if you just found my channel. Well, as long as it's sharp, it should be good to go. Literally anything, any, metal, can be made sharp. Sharpness is not the element that determines the quality of a blade. It's how well does the blade do given the task and the environment? There are literally thousands of compositions, some far better suited for certain tasks, right? But you have things like blade geometry. You have the blade shape. You have, is it coated or uncoated? What is the blade made out of? Does the composition emphasize edge retention? Does it balance edge retention with toughness or corrosion resistance or all three, right? As you spend more money, oftentimes you get a composition that is better suited for certain situations. 3CR13 MOV is a stainless composition. What you heard is a list of things that it can do effectively as a blade. It is currently sharp. It will not be sharp for very long. I use this to cut some boxes. I use this to cut box. And after box, it was dull. And that's because the composition is not only a composition that doesn't, emphasize in any type of, edge retention whatsoever. It's also not, I have a feeling it's not heat treated. It's just 3CR13 MOV. I don't know how they've heat treated this. A funny thing on the Amazon listing was that 3CR offers a balance. It literally says this. 3CR offers a balance of hardness and corrosion resistance. Like the composition it's hard stuff. It's metal. Oh God, This is such a piece of crap. Let's go ahead and let's measure this. Oh my God. Okay. So the overall length of this absolutely terrible piece of cutlery is, we're just going to measure tip to tip here. And when it's all the way up into a foot long, we got a 1 footer here. Very rarely, unless you have mental issues, are you going to be using this knife with both blades out, right? So let's measure it this way. This is the most practical way to have the knife. Wow, good Lord, it's 9¼ inches. It's still a big knife. Each blade measures roughly 3.45 inches in length. The cutting edge is 3¼ Let's do some size comparisons up against some knives that are generally more recognizable to my current audience. Any custom scales you find in this section for my general subscribers, you can find those down in the description under Original Goat and Others. So up against the 8010 and the 8020.5. These are far more expensive knives, but again, if you're looking for just a good, functional, inexpensive knife, please check out my playlist. I have 250 plus uploads of knives that are far, far superior in quality, and some of them don't cost much more. I realize that this is a cheap knife. I realize it. But you're essentially being ripped off for every single penny that this knife cost you versus spending potentially a little bit more money and getting something that is actually useful. And I mean, come on, look at this, right? 8010, 8020.5. So this is pretty big, right? So it's a pretty large object, especially when both blades are out. Let's put it up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3. Yeah, it's still big. And then finally up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue and the Hogue Deca. Great. How is the action on this knife? Well, it's assisted, as pretty much every knife in this category is going to be. These knives cater to people, you know, the idea that, you know, you're getting some, it's like, oh, it's a switchblade. I see it. You pull the thing down, oh, it's a spring assisted. That means it's quality, right? Assisted knives are, you know, they have been around for a very long time, and you can still get assisted knives from quality companies like Kershaw. It's just essentially a standard feature in, you know, entry-level cutlery. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad thing. We just live in an age where an assisted opening is no longer needed. Essentially, you're adding a torsion bar to the design so that the blade can deploy reliably, when nowadays pretty much every locking system or every detent system allows the user to deploy the blade reliably without the addition of a torsion bar, just an additional thing that can break, right? Does this have a detent ball? It does. So you could de-assist it. I don't know how good the detent is. Does it deploy reliably? Yes. And you know what? I'm going to give this credit where it's due. The liner lock on it, I actually beat this against one of the studs in my office. The liner lock is solid. It's probably one of the only good things I'm going to say about this knife. When it locks out, it locks out. This thing has the strength and reliability of a dragon. I'm not sure what to relate this to, but they did get the liner lock good, right? Now the actual, you know, play, like, is there play? Absolutely, right? But and you know what? Is there lock rock? Yes. In fact, you can hear it. You hear that? That's lock rock. That means that any solidity in the locking system in its current form is a fading glory. It's something that's just a small little ray of hope on this silly thing, right? So how is the action? Well, you pull the flipper tab and it deploys. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Yeah, it is reliable, right? It's not special. This is common. It is normal. It's been around forever, right? And the rest of the serious knife industry has essentially moved on from the necessity of these things. This is not a switchblade. A switchblade is a different thing. This is just as basic as it can be, with as much embellishment, as much cheap embellishment as possible to give the buyer and the end user the idea that they bought something special. You didn't. You basically just took $12 and threw it out the window, right? Or burned it, or whatever, you know, buried it in a hole, threw it in a well, right? Use the example that makes you feel, well, however it makes you feel is your own business. Either way, it was a bad purchase, right? But anyways, yeah, the action is, it does what you expect it to do, right? There are two blades, so they can be deployed at the same time. Why? Because because obviously it's an optimized weapon, right? People keep trying to tell me that this is something similar to a weapon on Star Trek. I don't know what argument that is. It's not a good one. If we're arguing practicality, but okay. Yeah. You do get double the edge retention, which is not saying much because the edge retention of 3CR13 MOV is box, singular, a box, before you will need to touch the edge up. The edge will still be a wedge of material that you can push through a box, but it won't be sharp anymore. So that's what you're looking at there. So the action is, it's a simple assisted knife. Carry profile. Let's do thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. Wow. Yeah, this is not easy to carry. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I put this in my pocket for roughly 3 hours. I've reviewed a lot of knives. So it took me, it was in there for 3 hours. It took me 10 seconds to go, yep, that's terrible. This is not fun to carry for a number of reasons. Mainly this dragon appendage that's in the middle. You know, we got the Siamese dragons with the, use your imagination, right? You don't need to use your imagination. It's right in front of your face. They knew what they were doing, right? But yeah, it's big and thick and awkward, and it is a stupid thing in the pocket. A stupid thing in the pocket for a number of reasons. How about length and height? Sure, length and height up against the PM2 and Para 3. So these are considered relatively tall folding knives. Very popular, very famous folding knife. I'm talking about this like the people watching this have never heard of the PM2 and Para 3. If you haven't, there's a whole world for you to discover. Not making fun of you, mostly making fun of this knife here, but yeah, I'm sure that you've heard of these knives, right? These are considered tall, especially the PM2 is considered kind of a long knife. It's somewhat awkward to carry for some people, but they make up for it for being incredibly utilitarian cutting tools. This is not even in the same universe. You can't, the word utility, wherever this came from, whatever dimension of like back-asswards nonsense. The word utility or function or reliability, all of those words just don't exist. I have to imagine it's just chaos and just particles slamming into each other. Nothing makes sense. There's no progression of society. There's no society. It's just nonsense, right? And apparently 3CR13 MOV, aluminum, and spray paint. That's what exists there, which wouldn't surprise me. But yeah, so this isn't fun to carry. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check on this knife. I'm going to get out my tools. My tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use on this channel. By the way, I will link this knife, but if you haven't picked up on it by now, I don't recommend it. I will link it so that you can go and read the reviews, which are, oh boy, they're good stuff. You can't trust any reviews on Amazon. You just can't. I mean, this knife proves it. This is a T8 for the pivot. Same over here. And then of course, everything else is T6, right? The pocket clip screws are, I think, those are also going to be T6. So yeah, you can take this thing apart. It's probably not super difficult to take apart. You're going to be working with a torsion bar. As long as you have the right tools for the job, should be good to go. You're probably not looking at anything special in terms of what the hardware is made out of, so I would expect it to strip. I also wouldn't be surprised if it's got red Loctite on it. In fact, I don't necessarily care about any part of this knife. It's just here for me to shed some light on the absolute poison cesspool that is the Amazon fantasy knife market, because nobody else seems to be doing this. Oh, it's not even, it was loose. There's no red Loctite on it. So yeah, it's pretty easy to adjust, right? But anyways, let's go ahead and measure the blade stock thickness of this bad boy, this bad mamma jamma here. I'm going to guess that that's 120 to 135 thousandths, probably. Come on, zero out there, big guy. We got 100 and it's kind of thin, 108 thousandths. Boy, that'll assist in the cutting geometry there. Okay. Let's weigh it. That'll be fun. This is made out of aluminum. What grade? I very much doubt it's 6. What's the? I haven't had to say it for so long. I've forgotten. I keep wanting to say 6AL4V, which is the grade 5 titanium that we're used to. But your your aircraft aluminum grade, 6061 T6 or 7075 is typically what we see on your quality, cutlery products. This is aluminum. It might be. I doubt it. It's probably just some other grade of aluminum that doesn't really matter. So you have aluminum. This is not anodized. This is painted. And then you have a lot of steel. And then you have the twin 3CR blades. So typically a knife that is relatively easy to carry, depending on, who you ask, is going to come in at, they can be ultra lightweight, but a typical pocket knife, I would say, weighs between 3 and 5 ounces. That's a pretty wide range. This weighs 9.1 ounces. So not only is it awkwardly shaped, but it's incredibly heavy. I mean, there are plenty of people who carry heavier knives, but yeah, it's also heavy. Okay, meat and potatoes time. This is a double-bladed assisted knife. The funniest thing about this is that this is clearly, this part right here, this little phallic little dragon nub, is clearly meant as like a non-lethal option for using this knife in a combat scenario, right? Most people who are buying these knives view knives as absolutely nothing but weapons. What could a knife possibly be other than a weapon? Of course, right? I've studied the blade. I've been to more than 40 smoke shops and little weird little outlets, little, what do they call those? We used to go to the there was one in Kansas we used to go to, the little flea markets, right? You visited many a market of treasures. I know the blade, the ways of the blade. I've read many articles and watched much of anime. I know, of course, the vast majority of pocket knives in this world are actually designed as tools. Some of them are designed as weapons, but this is essentially a company marketing to people who don't know any better. And if you bought this, they did it correctly, right? So the idea that a knife is a weapon, right? This is further, the fire that's under that idea has been, had gasoline dumped all over it with a design like this. Oh, of course. Yes, I know exactly what to do with that, right? The non-lethal option is only usable when the blade becomes exponentially more lethal because both blades are out. Obviously, the average person is not going to want to be punched in the face with this, right? Is this designed properly for any type of self-defense? No, it's essentially just a sharp, dangerous object, arguably just as dangerous for the user, right? I mean, like a piece of glass with tape wrapped around it so you can hold it. That is also the same idea. There's nothing about this knife that is optimized at all for self-defense, using it offensively, defensively. There's nothing. This is nonsense, right? 2 blades. The funny thing is, the only position where this knife is ergonomic at all is when both blades are out. The scenarios where you would effectively use both blades at the same time are limited to nothing, absolutely nothing, right? The most practical, position should be one blade because you're doing a task that only requires one blade, right? Like cutting a box open, which you are far more likely to do than fight the terrorists behind Walgreens or wherever you are, right? This is incredibly uncomfortable because the blade blocks the areas where your hands are supposed to line up with the frame. On top of that, you have what I can only assume is meant as a bottle opener gripping your pinky. Wow, that is so comfortable. Wonderful. Of course, the blade is both serrated and non-serrated, making simple tasks quite a bit more difficult. Now, there are definitely tasks that are made easier with serrations, but a lot of times the more expensive you get in the knife world, it doesn't even take that much, right? If you go up by $10, you'll start to notice that far fewer knives have serrations. Now, you can get expensive knives with serrations, and if you have something that you do like cutting twine or whatever, right? If you cut open a lot of harder packaging, things like that, there's certainly things that serrations make easier, right? But the problem is they are much more tedious to sharpen. They stay sharpish at long. I mean, it depends on what the material is and what you're doing with it, right? But serrations oftentimes get in the way of typical tasks that somebody, your average Joe who's carrying a pocket knife, gets the knife out to just use it for simple things. Serrations can often get in the way of things that are far easier to accomplish with a straight edge. So serrations typically give knives like this the added aggro look, right? You're like, oh yeah, of course. Well, We got the dragon theme, check. Fire, check. Black, check. Red, check. Serrations, holy crap, we got it all, right? The only thing that this is missing is a seatbelt cutter. I'm amazed that it doesn't have this. In fact, I have expected a grappling hook to fly out of the end of this. But it's serrated not because it gives you some sort of advantage. It's serrated because the company that's selling you this knife assumes that you want serrations on there, not because you need them, but because they look cool. That is the extent of that, and it is the reality of it. How is it sharpened? Not very well. You can see that this karambit thing almost wants to change angles out here. However this edge was put on, I don't know how many times this was put on. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if this sat in a warehouse for a really long time and they got them out and they're like, oh boy, this whole batch is crap. We're gonna have to, just buzz some new, get out the, get out the files and put some quick edges on these. Stat. These needs to just be barely sharp so that we can just use the word sharp on the Amazon page and the people buying them will know no difference, right? That's what we're looking at here. How does it actually slice now that it's been touched up? And let me tell you, I have this thing sharper than it came out of the box. So how does it slice now? I can actually get into paper with it, but this is not a wonderful edge. The tip will poke, it'll cut, right? If you only cut paper, you might get a few days of edge retention. I'm kidding, it'll probably be fine. But if you go out and use this thing on anything, right? I mean, the edge is gone. 3CR 13 MOV will not hold an edge. You'll be left with a wedge, giving you the impression that it's still sharp, but it won't be sharp, right? A true sharp edge is not an edge that you would want to run your finger over because it will cut you with no pressure. You don't want to do that, right? So if it's not like that, it's not sharp. A quality, in fact, not even, it doesn't even take that much, it's hardly any, I mean, even in the budget territory, you can get a knife for $30 that has a blade steel composition that will, in essentially every way, be superior. Edge retention, toughness, corrosion. I mean, there's some, balance where 3CR comes out on top, probably in some sort of stainless quality, right? But most of the time, if you're cleaning your knife off, right, your lower end compositions have enough chromium to where the excess, whatever excess is provided by 3CR 13 MOV, gives the end user no benefit, right? So all the qualities that you'd want in a blade are simply not present because the company cheaped out. It's not because they wanted to give you a good deal. It's because they wanted to use the least expensive composition possible so that they could create as much markup as possible, slap the thing together, and grab as much. I can't even imagine that there's an enormous amount of profit off of these things, right? But I don't know, maybe somebody's making a killing. It kills me that Masters Collection, MC, they're using the same initials. That's my channel. How dare they, right? So the grind is, given it's not even a thick blade, they have decided that it primarily needs to be flat. So where the bevel starts down, right here and goes down to what is eventually meant to be the cutting bevel is quite thick. So you don't end up with anything that is, optimized in terms of geometry for cutting, right? Well, it's clearly designed to get through Kevlar or just like a really dense jean jacket. Like most of the guys that I fight behind Walgreens, they're wearing the thickest jean jackets. And this type of dragon knife is optimized, for getting the... Okay, yeah, I mean, it is a sharp piece of metal. It probably can do a lot of damage, right? I would argue that, somebody who's had a lot of Mountain Dew and is wielding a rolling pin is probably more dangerous. I mean, that's very circumstantial, right? But again, there's no advantage given. It's just a bright, colorful object that happens to have a pointy metal object coming out of both ends of it, right? Let's talk about the appearance of this. This is something that they are very proud of, right? The Masters Collection touts these as collectible and designed by, I think they put it as master knife designers. That's pretty subjective, right? They keep that pretty open because you can say that about anybody. Well, it's just if you press them on that, they'd be like, well, it's our opinion. Dave is, I would consider Dave a professional. There's no way his name's Dave, but we're going to call him Dave, right? We at the Masters Collection, we would consider Dave very passionate, right? And Dave's passion, the extent of Dave's passion is just drawing dragons, apparently Siamese dragons that share this particular appendage, right? That's his passion, is drawing that on napkins. And they're like, can you make a knife? And I'm like, yeah, Dave, hey, good job, man. We'll see you next week. We'll see what else you got cooking. There's literally no one important designing these. There's no one that has any real experience with any. It doesn't take a super spectacular, background, or an extensive background in knife design to come up with a simple liner lock. A simple liner lock with an assisted feature or torsion bar and a blade that is shaped like a blade, right? Slapping that together in 2024 is, literally, anybody could do that in their sleep, right? An OEM, I'm not saying like the average person could just wake up and, here's a knife. I'm saying the average OEM is like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean? Can we do that? Like we've been able to do that for, 30 years. It's nothing. There's nothing masterful about this design. It's just bright and colorful. This is not a coating. This is paint. This can be scratched off probably immediately by anything. In fact, here we'll use the disposable blade on the Hawk, right? Yeah. So this is paint. Now, to be fair, you could probably do this, even like a PVD coating. But this is like really coming off easy. This is paint, right? It's interesting. I kind of half expected to see something else underneath there. But it is whatever the aluminum is with paint. And they didn't even really bother to like make sure that the edges of the teeth and oh no, it's like part of the artistic, it's the aura of the dragon. He's very powerful, of course, it's obviously very powerful. So that's his. No, it's just that they had like I don't know if they had like a stencil or something, and then they just and it's just squirted some paint as it went by, and they're like, that's fine, screw it together, right? That's what this is. Same way with the blade. This I called them like caterpillars from hell. Somebody pointed out this is supposed to be the fire. Like the whole blade is supposed to represent like the fire coming from the dragon's mouth. Okay, yeah, I guess now I see it. I think they were like, what should we put on the blade? And they're like, I don't know. And they just like have some application. They have like some apostrophes, right? It just looks like a series of apostrophes. There's like paint them red and you're good to go. So yeah, that's what this is. It's not special in any way. I think the most magical part of this, is it comfortable to disengage? No, but it does. Like that's not really the worst part of it. The most magical part of this comes from putting it in the pocket. So I always stress to people that especially when you're dealing with a flipper knife, even manual, tip up and tip down carry in terms of like the position of the tip is usually a preference, but there definitely is a safe and unsafe way to carry a flipper knife. You definitely don't want a flipper knife to be tipped down. Why? Because if you're carrying this like a normal person, right, you do have goofballs. I feel like the ratio, like the number of people buying this who are the type of people who carry a pocket knife on the outside of their pants is much higher, right? So this is probably like bizarre territory. All these videos are going to do is chase these people off. What the heck? This guy's a pompous jerk. I'm not watching this guy's channel. If you carry the knife on the outside of the pocket, that's wrong. And I'll tell you why. I'm not just like, because you're a goofball. It's because if you walk by something and the snag of because number one, you're far more likely to snag the knife on something than you are the pocket clip because the knife is so much wider. You snag the knife on something and it breaks the clip off, which it could because the clip is a very cheap steel material, most likely. Then you lose the knife if you're not paying attention and you're left with the pocket clip. The other way around, the pocket clip snaps off. That's annoying, but you still have the knife, right? Now, if this is the knife you still have, I can't say that you're in a better position. You might actually be in a better position to put the knife on the outside of the pocket, have it break off and lose it, and then you're just left with the clip because the clip by itself, unironically, is probably more useful than the knife. But anyways, that's a whole different subject. Carrying a flipper knife tipped down is a little dangerous, assuming you're carrying it correctly up against the back seam of your pocket. If something bumps this flipper tab, especially because it is assisted, it springs partially open in your pocket. Now imagine with me, the right-hand side, this is where you're carrying it, or the left-hand side, because again, it's got two blades. Imagine with me the position of this blade and what it is pointing at, and the phallic dragon non-lethal part of the knife as well. This is a problem, gentlemen. Or ladies, it's a problem for everybody. Nobody wants this pointed at their crotch. That's why you don't do that, right? This is both tip up and tip down, so it doesn't matter. It's dangerous to carry, period. I mean, literally, either way, both flipper tabs are pointed towards the outside, the back seam of your pocket, right? So, yeah, it's unlikely something's going to bump it, but if it does, you got two dragon claws pointed at your goods. It's not a good idea. Not a good idea at all. Also, it is insanely uncomfortable to carry. Insane. This is poking up against you. You try to pull it out, and this double bottle openers will get caught on the way out, right? Oh, this is a tactical advantage because it's supposed to catch it and deploy the blade. So you can be faster than the terrorists, yeah. All right. It's just a huge problem. There's points and little sticks and things sticking out everywhere. It's just not good. Everything that I have put in my pocket has been optimized in every way over this. Every part of this knife makes you slower and worse at whatever it is you're trying to do. Just living your life is sub-optimized with this attached to your person. It's legitimately like leveling up a character in any RPG and then attaching a piece of equipment that does nothing but lower all of your stats. That's what this is. Minus 50 integrity, minus 100 intelligence, minus 1,000 attractiveness, minus you can't graduate grade school with this. You can't do basic. This is basic walking around. It just makes you dumber and slower. Everything that you do. I'm obviously being sarcastic, right? There's a lot of people who are watching this right now for reaffirmation that they made a good purchase, and they're met with, what are we going on here? A 31-minute video of some crazy knife guy telling them that they made the dumbest purchase of their life. And while it isn't that dramatic, it is close. You essentially threw $12 out the window, right? Lockup. No. The liner lock itself is enough to keep the blade in the open position, but there is lock rock, and this will only get worse. Meaning, as you move the blade back and forth, that slipping, clicking sound, oh boy, that's quality stuff. That means that's going to get worse. Every time that thing locks up, it's going to keep changing. It's not going to get better. Left and right, yeah. It runs on Teflon washers. There's good knives that run on Teflon washers, bad knives, right? It's got left and right play, meaning it wiggles in the open position, right? There's a little bit of lock stick. It does have enough of that, like in the what's holding it in place is enough to hold it there. But again, you bump something, it's going to deploy it, which is another reason why I just kind of like a manual knife. Not all assisted knives are bad, but this is bad for a number of other reasons well outside of what we normally talk about here. I like that the other side, they're like, don't paint it. It's just leave it black. Who cares, right? It only needs to look good for the Amazon ad, right? This is one of those things where you get it and you're like, like you see the advertised burger at McDonald's, and then you get it and you open it up and you're like, oh, who stepped on this? Like, why is it? It's not even the right color. This is just barely what you would expect. I guarantee you got this and you were like, oh. And you turn it over and you're like, no, they didn't paint it, right? Master of what, right? Is this one of those knives that says USA design? Yeah, USA design. Guys, my audience knows this. If you found my channel after you bought this, maybe it's on the way, right? Or maybe you're considering buying it and you found my channel. What does USA design means? It means that someone who currently lives here or lived here at one time drew a picture of this on a piece of paper and sent it off to some nobody Chinese OEM, and they basically pooped this out. Again, legitimately just Dave made this. USA does, that's all that means. It has no tie to the United States whatsoever. Even the steel, the whatever CR, whatever MOV, this all the Chinese steel. Now, it's not to say that everything that's made in China is bad. China definitely has some really quality OEMs, many of which you can learn about on my channel. This is not one of them. This is not a company who cares. This is a company who is preying on people who don't know anything about folding knives, and they're hoping that the dragons and the low price tag and all of their pictures and usage of the words quality and collectible and all of that will entice you. It's not good. I do not recommend this. In fact, this is one of the worst knives I've ever handled. Not the worst. They definitely do get worse. But to cap this video off, if your argument for me is, hey, at the end of the day, it's a sharp object that I can use as a tool, and hey, get off my back. I only paid $12 for it. It is not a sharp object. It was not sharp from the factory, and as sharp as I can get it, it is dull faster than I can say dragon wiener. No, it is not utilitarian in hardly any way, and you took $12 and threw it out the window. I mean, you will continue to do this until you buy a reasonable pocket knife for just slightly more money. It'll serve you far better, right? It might not be as flashy and as interesting. I mean, they still have those elements in sometimes in knives that are more seriously designed by people who legitimately do know what they're doing, who they are an OEM who will actually take the time to make sure that the fit and finish is good, that the lockup is good in most cases, right? We still have our own issues here, even in the quality end of the knife world for sure, right? But you're just getting better quality for the money. It's better to spend a little bit more in many cases. And again, if you don't know where to start, my channel and many, many others like me have outlined this in detail, right? My own playlist, Cheap Knives I Like, has 250 uploads plus. The whole goal is to hopefully steer people away from this. I don't care if you find a brand you like, whatever, I don't care. Stay away from stuff like this. This is bad. Get away from this. This is a deceptive, malicious brand who does not care about delivering a quality product. They just want your money, which is funny because oftentimes that's what people say about knives that cost more than this. Oh, they're obviously ripping you off, right? They are obviously money hungry. No, it's quite the opposite, especially at the lower end. You are getting dollar for dollar a much higher quality item. The part of this knife that is bad is not the China part, right? I mean, some people have, they don't want to buy things from China. That's fine. But there are Chinese OEMs that are out there that make super high quality items. In fact, a lot of the really great budget stuff is made by Chinese OEMs. But there are also bad Chinese OEMs that make stuff like this. Same thing in the United States. You have really great USA knife makers and USA knife OEMs. And then you have really, really bad ones. Same with any other country that's known for making cutlery, right? You have good and bad. It's what Nick Shabazz says is not about geography. It's about effort, which is absolutely true. This is a terrible product. Don't waste your money on it. Find something else. That's going to be pretty much it today. I don't normally do this type of content, but I have to admit it was really, really fun picking this thing apart. Masters Collection. If you watch this video and you are offended by this video, I don't care. Stop making these. Stop distributing them. These are bad, but they're not the only company I'm going to go after. So that's going to be it today, guys. Please check out the links in my description for much better products. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex and on TikTok at _metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.